Go we?
All righty, sounds good. So welcome to the weekly guides chat with Yamnuska Mountain Adventure. So all you Yamnuskavites who are tuned in, this week I get the privilege of interviewing my fellow colleague and mountain guide, Mr. Nick Sharpe. And so might as well start at the beginning. Nick, where are you from?
Well, I'm English. I'm from the northwest area of England called the Lake District, a place called Kendal. You may have heard the Kendal Mountaineering Festival. You've actually been there, haven't you, Barry?
I have indeed, and I've also had the pleasure of indulging in Kendal mint cakes, often described as oiled, boiled, and compressed sugar. So for those not of our generation, how would you describe a Kendal mint cake?
Kendal mint cake, like 100% sugar. The thing you want to put in your survival kit, because it's the last thing you ever want to eat when you're dying. But yeah, very nice stuff. Yeah, so Northern England, Lake District, a real rock climbing area, some general mountaineering, pretty good place actually. I did a bit of, started climbing with the school, got dragged out with the schoolmasters with a local mountain rescue team in the local area. And I had a big interest in aeroplanes when I was a kid. So I eventually ended up joining the RAF.
Oh, right. What ranges are close to Kendal? What's technically the name of the range or ranges?
Well, it's the Cumbrian Mountains in the Lake. It's one of the largest national parks in the UK.
Right. And what would be the highest summit? It's always kind of a cop out to go to highest, but just to put it in reference for Canadians, yeah.
About 3,000 feet. There's about 4 of the peaks in the area around about that height. So there's really good cragging and general mountaineering and fell walking, as they call it in the area.
Yeah. Something that's always kind of blows my socks off is, you can take Great Britain, fit it in Alberta, yet you have, I forget how many different types of rock to climb on, but if you're a Rockies climber and you have basically 4, it's pretty staggering to think.
The UK is a brilliant area for trad rock. Recently, well, the last 20 years got into sports climbing, and there's some sea cliffs, limestone crags, which doesn't really give you good natural protection. So they went to vaults there too. And in some places in Scotland as well, we're starting to, there's some pretty well developed vaulted areas now.
Right. And just to skip ahead for climbers, how has the kind of switch from such a traditional British introduction to climbing and, traditional protection, how has that been for you coming to Canada when you did? And we'll get to that part of the story, but I'm really interested in how that is for you, having come from traditional British climbing and come over to Canada when bolting and sport climbing and I won't say riskless climbing, but less risk intense climbing.
Yeah, I've been to North America before and done some climbing in the States and Canada, a bit of ice climbing. And moving here from the UK, I've definitely lost some of my trad climbing skills, like how far can you run it out from some trad gear because of the abundance of bolts and things like that. And I found it very risk averse up here, as in there's still really good trad climbing in the area, but I found it was quite soft touch compared with general stuff I was brought up on in the UK and Scotland.
No, interesting. And well, to skip back a ways back to your childhood in and around Kendal and getting into mountain climbing and cragging out of your town. You'd mentioned that you'd had an interest in airplanes. So you're already into climbing when you get it into the RAF, or yeah.
Well, I was in the Air Cadets, and we did some AT with them guys as well, and that sort of led to me joining the RAF full time when I was about 16 and a half. So I ended up doing some basic training down in England flatlands, and I got drafted to a unit in Scotland called Lucas near St Andrews in Fife.
Maybe backtrack, just to backtrack for folks, for anyone who doesn't know, when we say AT, we're referring to adventurous training, of which rock climbing and mountain climbing would be part. And then I doubt anyone doesn't really know what the RAF is, but we'll just say it, the Royal Air Force.
Very much so, actually. Yeah, I arrived there, and one of the procedures you get when you first arrive, and this was pre-computers and stuff like this, you got a pile of papers like this, and you wrote out your number, rank, name, and it just became automatic, and threw them all in. And then I was at my workplace, which was looking after air-to-air guided weapons. And I got this phone call from a gruff guy called Flight Sergeant Blythe. He was quite a character, actually, a squat guy, but he goes, Legion Aircraftman Sharpe, you've applied to join the mountain rescue team. And I did, did that? Because I didn't realize that application in there to join the team. So he asked me if I wanted to do a 3-month trial, and I went along and did the trial, and yeah, my entry into the Royal Air Force Mountain Rescue Service, quite interesting.
And what were the Royal Air Force Mountain Rescue Service responsible for? What was, on their call sheet, if you will?
I'll just pull up here we go. Dual click. There we go. Well, it's a very good slide, but that's an actual hole in the ground from a fast jet. Back in the Second War, there was a whole bunch of aircraft that went missing in the mountains on training exercises. And there was a guy called Flight Lieutenant Graham in North Wales who decided to do something about it. And he got a bunch of guys together and started one of the first mountain rescue teams in the UK, organised rescue. That developed into a number of teams spread around the UK. And it eventually all panned out to 6 teams, 2 in Scotland, 2 in England, and 2 in Wales. And I ended up being on one of the 36-man teams up in Scotland at Lucas in Fife. Yeah, so the primary role for the Air Force rescue teams to this day is it's number one is for military aircraft in distress and the air crew on board, military personnel out on adventure training or in the wilderness, and then as a third one, civilian search and rescue assistance, military aid to the civil community, and that is probably the biggest amount of work that the teams do. There's only 3 teams left in the Air Force now due to cutbacks over the period, 1 in Scotland, 1 in England, 1 in Wales, and they're still doing sterling work in the UK. Cool. It's not stepping forward. Got my technical expert sorted out. Right, so the idea is you join the teams on a 3-month trial. You get to do various bits and pieces. Primarily, you get taught a little bit of technical rescue, which is what's happening here. A really old sort of system, which is much more updated now. There's a Kurt Modner, Kurt. He's now I think 10, well, more than that now. Kurt got hired to go over to the UK and modernise the RAF's search and rescue, mountain rescue team's technical rescue skills. But this is a pulley system to tension ropes, and the means of attaching the ropes to the tensioning system to the ropes is using a thing called the dog in the tails. which is really a woven. It slips under a woven rope, and it slips under a certain force naturally, and it was a super easy way of tensioning ropes up. We used to do, we got taught how to do stretcher lowers. That's an old system too, but it worked. We had lots of times in the mountains, mountaineering, walking, and practicing search tactics. This is actually on a search up in the Cairngorm somewhere, a line search, looking for people lost out there or looking for clues. We got to play with these guys a lot. That's the Mighty Wessex, an old style aircraft, but it was super effective in the job it did. And those were phased out to these things, Sea Kings. I'm not sure the Canadian forces still use these things, but if they do, I think they might be on board somewhere. In fact, I think one was lost in the Mediterranean not long ago. Must be really long in the tooth now. These things picked us up, dropped us off, and carried us around the mountains whenever the weather was good. One of the big things about the RAF teams is our punchline was the fact that we were the only all-weather search and rescue asset that the Air Force had. Because some of the weather we went out in was absolutely pretty tricky stuff. General mountaineering was high in the priority of the team's training, was general fitness, moving around in terrain that was similar to this, steep, unroped, so you got around confident. We got to do little exercises, rigging stretchers, smoke for wind direction for these guys to come in and pick people up. And that was all part and parcel of the basic training in the teams. Every year there was a 2-week, well, during my period in the Air Force, there was a 2-week winter mountaineering and winter climbing course. And they took the aspiring guys from the teams, a couple from each team, a couple of instructors, and they went up to Scotland and put on a 2-week course. And the aims of this was to actually develop skills and bring the guys with the correct aptitudes into the instructor level of doing stuff. That's just topping out of a gully. Actually, you have to dig through the old corners. Hopefully, I don't have to do this weekend on Victoria, but we'll see what happens. Big boot climbing as well. There was a big emphasis on being able to move around well without having to change your attire or your footwear. And moving through steep terrain with big boots on was a pretty important factor as well.
On that note, do you still have your Joe Brown helmet and your Willens harness?
Oh God, no. I got rid of a Willens harness as soon as I possibly could. Bit of a nut crusher, those things. It took a big peel. Yeah, like quartz vein scoop on Benula in Scotland. Super nice little grade 3. Really good for training. Not too stressful. This is an aspect of Scotland that people don't realise happens. That's a pretty big avalanche. And we got plenty of jobs going to look for people. I think the Air Force rescue teams are one of the first organisations in the UK who actually started using peeps. You know the peeps? One where you stuck the thing in your ear and put it around on the ground? Oh man. Yep. What a pain in the ass those things were. But anyway, Alistair Havron, who was the war officer in charge of the mountain rescue at the time, was instrumental in bringing those items into use in the teams for the team's safety. Rock climbing, super big one. Once you went on the winter course and got some more experience, you actually managed to get out and develop your own skills a little bit more. And that's one of the first lead climbs I ever did. And that is a Joe Brown helmet, Barry.
Well, if it's any consolation, I actually still have my Joe Brown helmet and my Willens sit harness, and you're welcome for nostalgic sake to borrow them anytime you want.
I remember I don't know if that was Snowden Bolden to Joe Brown, but they produced this T-shirt. There was a guy's head in this Joe Brown helmet, and there was a pack of guts underneath it, and the comment was, "At least his head's all right," because these things were built like tanks. Yeah, and once you got into you went through all the courses. Like I passed my 3-month trial and became a team member, and I didn't look back. I just loved it. Getting out every weekend, different location, different pub on Saturday night. I got to a position where I was considered to be competent to take other parties out in the mountains. And you're given the responsibility to take guys out and look after them in the mountain environment in summer and winter. So places like this were classic venue for the teams. This is a mountain called Buccleuch Moor, the Great Shepherd. And there's another one to the right of this called Buccleuch Beg, which was the Small Shepherd. I don't know if I got that the right way around, but whatever. This is a classic place to go mountaineering. There's hard rock routes, winter routes, just classic scrambling. And I learned how to short rope people on this thing, bottom to top. It's about a 3,000 foot mountain. They're all called Munros. Anything at 3,000 feet and over, it's called a Munro. And there was a movement around Scotland and the UK that Munro baggers to click them all, to tick them all, I should say. And quite a few of the team members went out and actually bagged all of them. And there's like over 200 of things, over 3,000 feet. And some of them are quite tricky. That's heading up a route called Curve Ridge, unroped at the time, a little bit higher up. That's sort of finishing actually, heading up towards the summit. And some interesting ground lower down. This is a route on Buckle, one of the first harder mixed climb we actually did, called Agag's Groove, and that was probably about the 2nd or 3rd ascent in winter. It was Scottish grade 6 as well, mixed climbing. So developed quite nicely as a mountaineer myself. This is the Big Bad Ben, and Ben Nevis in Scotland, and that's you can't quite see it, but there's a ridge in the foreground. There's this face. There's a nice big gully up the front. There's a gap right in the middle called the Chellick Gap, and then the other side is the Orion face of Ben Nevis. And the ridge in the foreground here is actually over 2,000 feet high. So Ben Nevis is 4,400 feet, and it's actually get 2,000 foot routes, 1,500 foot routes on it. There's mixed climbs, ice climbs, amazing rock climbing in certain places.
So on the ice climbs on Ben Nevis in the winter time, how much the protection would be with ice screws relative to rock equipment?
It totally depends on the conditions. Sometimes I've been on the bend sometimes, and you could probably literally climb anywhere you wanted to because of the like styrofoam type snow ice that builds up on the stuff. Great tool placements and not the world's best place to put ice screws in. You do get routes like 0.5 and 0 and Orion face, where you can get pretty good ice screws. Probably in your era as well. Ice screws in early days were actually pretty primitive. They took a lot of energy to get in, and the guys today have got it easy with the screws, how easily they actually go into the rock. You have to be pretty proficient in digging out cracks and bits and pieces for Trad Pro as well. So plenty of good stuff. Got an interesting.
So at that time, as a winter climber, how many ice screws would you have on your rack for, like a 0 gully ascent?
Saliwa screws, probably 8 to 10, something like that, if you had the financial means of buying them.
Right.
The good thing about the rescue teams was the fact that we got free gear, free transport, free food, free instruction, and we went somewhere different every weekend, which was fantastic for a young guy like me. probably in the first 10 years of being on the teams, I went home, literally home about twice. The rest of the time I was either out with the teams or out doing your own thing, climbing. Interesting stuff. We had a good call out on this one. We were on a route on the left-hand side here, and there's a couple of guys on the route on the right-hand side. And I was watching what the other guys were doing, and we saw these two people sliding out of this gully line and landed in the bottom of the bowl. And we go, oh, something going on here. So I got on the radio to the guys across the way and goes, yeah, two guys had just come sliding out the gully below us. And anyway, I had my eyes on these two at the bottom, and they were probably separated by a bit of a distance. We saw one guy get up, or one person get up, and slowly walk across to the next guy, the other guy, bend over, get back up, walk away, walk back to him, and looked over him again, and walked away again. And then we saw something weird going on here. Anyway, a third time, this person, I should say, walked up to this guy and started kicking him for some reason. Didn't know the full story at the time, but we got onto the blower and got a chopper in. We wrapped off our route. Both of our teams wrapped off the route, and we head down to this guy. And we dealt with him. He had a broken ankle and some puncture wounds in his right shoulder. And then we anyway got a chopper in. One of the Sea Kings came in, lifted him up and took him out. And I was chatting with the guys who'd just been below these two when this guy fell off. These two fell out, and what had happened was a party of two had come up, and the more experienced person was the female. There was a male and female in the group, and she was pretty handy apparently. She put this guy on a ledge, who seemed to be quite a novice, and was running out to the ledges where my buddies were, and she was just about to clip the anchor, and the other guy had taken his ice axe out and was starting moving up, and just before she clipped the anchor, this guy fell off and dragged her off the route. He slid all the way down to the bottom of the bowl there. Anyway, we could account for the broken ankle, but the puncture wounds in his shoulder here were actually from this lady's crampon points for kicking him. Not very good actually, but anyway.
And I take it she was kicking him not to see if he was responsive.
No, kicking him because she was a bit pissed off with him actually. But anyway, yeah, we'll move on there. This is a route on the right face there. Pretty interesting terrain, going through runnels and ice, topping out the top, and that's Tower Ridge in the background.
Right.
With you see the far side is where there's a gully line where these guys come sliding out of. Oh yeah, you should know that one. This is slightly out of space, out of plane here. Well, that's Duran, right?
Yeah.
An expedition.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll come to that later.
Yeah. So was it a military expedition to Duran Peak, Nick?
Yeah, it was. Well, I'll come on to the expedition a little bit later on. There's this is another area we frequented a lot, especially on the winter courses, was Corrin Locken. And actually, I revisited this place on my guides exam up in Scotland there. We did our one of our mixed climbing days here. Well, it was our mixed climbing day here. And me and a guy called Andy Perkins. Andy Perkins are up here.
Yeah, I know Andy. Great winter climber, great guide all around. But yeah, when did you get interested in mountain guiding while you were doing all the adventurous training and working on the rescue
About
duty?
I had a really massive, fantastic progression from being a complete novice to being actually like a winter mountaineering instructor during the course of my time in the Air Force Mountaineering Mountain Rescue. And there was British domestic qualifications that allowed you to do all the things I was doing with the rescue teams, but went through the Mountain Leader Training Board, which is the governing body for mountaineering qualifications in the UK, or one of them anyway. And I had an inkling I'd probably want to go and do something like that in the future, but it didn't really come as a real motivating drive until actually I'd been to the Alps and the Greater Ranges and certain things. And then one of the biggest drives was that I actually married a Canadian lass, and I wanted to move out here and actually work in the outdoors. And the British domestic qualifications wouldn't allow me to do that, so it was all or nothing for a guides call, I think.
Right. And just out of curiosity, how many British servicemen do you know of who have qualified as mountain guides while they're in service?
Well, I actually didn't qualify fully when I was still in the Air Force. I think the only serving member of the British Armed Forces to ever qualify while they were still serving was Paul Chiddle, who used to work for Yam, now works at the university. I actually didn't do my ski test until I actually left the Air Force in 2000. I left the Air Force in 2002 and did my ski test in 2006.
All right. And the new chief instructor at Trails End Camp, the British Adventure Training.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot about him. Yeah, he's Nathan. Yeah, Nathan qualified last year as a full mountain guide, and he's still serving. He's a second man.
Yeah. Well, I just put this out there to any, if perchance we have any British service folk watching right now, and you are a keen climber, skier, please be aware that, man, what an opportunity to get through your courses while not having to worry about making a living. So sounds like a good deal. And I know, Nick, I've seen you encourage so many of the servicemen we work with to just their time in the RB, get as much out of it as you can. It's pretty cool.
Well, definitely. Yeah. Well, anybody who's in the service is absolutely happy to watching this. And if you're into doing stuff like mountaineering, go get the quals and do the exams and do that. You don't know when it's going to take you. And I had no inkling when I first joined the Air Force rescue teams that I was going to end up in Canada as a full mountain guide working for Yamnuska. So it was quite a change. I've had a couple of ambitions in life. One was to join the Air Force, one was to run a rescue team. And the third one that popped up was to be a mountain guide, and I managed to attain them all. So not through no mean amount of hard work though, really bad news in some cases. This is current trek, and we had an interesting incident actually on our guides exam. We'd done two pretty difficult routes, one each, and our instructor, who will remain nameless, me and Andy got down, we caught on the ropes, and this guy had ran off over the top, and we were, oh God, let's get the ropes coiled and get going. We crested a snow ridge, and we got some of these two French guys on one of the mixed climbs. Goes, "Oi, monsieur, your mate's just fallen." It was, oh God, here comes the old emergency inject for the assessment. Anyway, it wasn't. We got down to our assessor, and he'd actually quite badly busted an ankle and he had his ski poles and his pack in his back, and we looked at him, and his ski poles had come through about 3 layers of cordura and put a nasty gouge up the back of his head and nearly knocked his helmet off. Anyway, we built a platform, got him stabilized, got him insulated, and I was actually the Air Force chief instructor at the time while I was going through my guides exam. And I got onto Retrieve Castle, which was it was actually the Rescue Coordination Centre in Kinloss at that time. And I actually got into those guys and identified who I was. And there's a certain protocol where you tell them the incident, and they knew who I was. And they technically had to call me back, so I put the radio down, cell phone down, whatever. And they called me back and confirmed it was a real incident. And he was in hospital in Inverness in 40 minutes from the time of the accident to getting out there. So it was actually a pretty good outcome to that one. Anyway, we got a lift back down. We got a lift back down to Glenmore Lodge, And we got out of the chopper, and me and Andy were walking over to the centre, and Paul Moores, big mountain guide, who was the technical guy for the British Mountain Guides at the time, came wandering out, and he goes, "Right, what went wrong?" And he probably thought that we'd caused some sort of accident. But once we explained to him what had happened, things sort of panned out quite nicely.
Well, the takeaway there is if you're mountaineering in Scotland in the wintertime, make sure you're with a serving member of the RAF Mountain Rescue Squad.
It was just one of those things, just he tripped over a crampon and slid on his face. And yeah, it happens to everybody, doesn't it? But yeah, this is one of the classic routes here, Gaggers Groove, good mixed route. Yeah, this one here, call out in the Cairngorms, two serving personnel from the army actually. The days previous to this, there'd been 3 other fatalities in the Cairngorms. The Cairngorms in winter can be an incredibly hostile environment. And there was 3 students from Heriot University in Edinburgh who'd gone to a hut called the Sinclair Hut. Actually, there was 5 students, and they super bad weather, and the guys had got to the vicinity of the hut, but they couldn't actually find the hut because of the visibility. Anyway, they had tents, and the pitch tents. The tents got wrecked during the night because of the gale force winds and the snow. And they tried again to find the hut. And the hut's only actually 2 or 3 k's from the car park. And they decided to head out back to the car park. And on the way out, the 3 out of the 5 perished. We went in a day after. The next morning, we found 3 of these guys just out on the trail, frozen to death. During the course of that storm, 2 personnel out on a winter assessment got into difficulty as well. And this is a site of a snow hole area where they thought they might be. And we had to go in and try and dig the snow holes out and probe in the area. But they actually weren't in that area, and they were found a day later, not too far away, hunkered down, but unfortunately they perished. So the environment in Scotland is probably one of the harshest ones I've been in, bar being on Denali. And it's probably the place I've feared for my life more than anywhere else in the world in bad conditions, which says something for how harsh it can get. In the vicinity of that, there was another incident that we got involved with at a different, 2 guys on a route called Helter Skelter. It was like grade 2, grade 3, and they got into difficulty, and they managed to raise the alarm. Anyway, we got there, and some guys went up the gully, and they found one of the guys on this ledge in his sleeping bag. And there's a set of boots with crampons sat next to him, and he was asked, "Whose boots are they?" He goes, "Oh, those are my mates." And "Where's your mate at?" And he goes, "Oh, he slid down the gully." So we had to go search down below the gully to find the guy, and we actually found him. He was sat in his sleeping bag still after sliding a couple of 100 meters down this slope through rocks and all sorts. Anyway, this is the evacuation. That Sea King had to have a taxi up to the vicinity of this guy. We loaded him on, and Mark Troy, the guy in the front, was uttering some sort of expletives about how dodgy the situation was. But the pilots in those choppers were actually pretty exceptional in some circumstances. Yeah, so some of that was work, and a lot of it was play. And some of the things we used to go and play out on was this is the Old Manor Store, how to get to it on the old aircrew dinghy. Rigged a line up there to actually get to and from. So you either swum across or took a wee dinghy in there. Fun time doing stuff like that. And then we got to do stuff like this as well, which is the Old Manor Hoy. There's actually a film out there at the moment that's available to watch about a blind guy climbing this thing. Don't have any shots of us climbing it, but Yeah, we got a Sea King helicopter to drop a 500-foot rope on the top of this thing, so we didn't have any difficulty getting off. That was slightly misappropriation of military equipment, but they actually were out on the Orkney Islands to play with the RNLI, Royal National Lifeboat Institute, as a joint type exercise, and we managed to hitch a lift across there, which was super good fun. We didn't get dropped off the top ourselves, but we actually climbed the route, wrapped down, and got the rope recovered when the helicopter came back to get us. During the course of my career, I got actually pretty into rock climbing. It's a pretty dusty slide, that one, isn't it? And this is probably one of my breakthrough routes. It's like a trad route called High Performance. And it was graded E3 6A, which is probably mid-11s on trad. Yeah, pretty good. That's probably about a third, 3% of it at the time. I got into roofs as well, and this was a thing called Bopo Crack, another gnarly little roof. I actually managed to, in the course of my training, manage one-arm pull-ups, and this was essential in getting over this roof. So pretty good. Totally different rock, like you were saying earlier, Barry. Tons of different. This is a schist type rock. Lots of amazing cracks and little pods in the cracks with trad gear. A good smattering of old pitons and things like that as well. This thing here was just totally. This is an old aid route. Again, that was about E3 6A. Very much easy 11s, mid 11s, and all the crack lines and roof lines there were all really, really good trad climb routes. I actually put a route up with my own up on the right hand side there, which went about 5-10 Cs like that. This thing here was interesting. It's a bit contrasty, but it's above a pretty raging creek in Glen Nevis. You fell off the first bit and didn't have any gear, and you ended up in this horrible maelstrom of water. I managed to. That's I think it was called Aquarian Rebels, and the little crack lines were totally rounded, and really hard to get gear in. Yeah, this is one of the more classic places in Wales, Cenotaph Corner, and that was a busy day, as you can see. Going from left to right, you got Memory Lane, and you got left wall on the left here. The line on your lightest rope on the left was like a rite of passage for anybody who wanted to go and do harder things on this wall. And it was a soaring crack line that went about E2 5C, which again is top end 10s over here, but purely on trad climbing. And these things are like 120 feet high. It felt way longer when you're on them. This is one of those routes on the left side, and it's about mid 11s again. I think that was True Grit or Resurrection, something like this. As you can see, it was called Cenotaph Corner, and all the names were after sort of a slightly on the morbid side, but provided incredible rock climbing. This thing called the Lord of the Flies. Not the Lord of Flies, sorry, right wall. Lord of Flies is the route to the left, which I managed to get up after about 3 attempts. Yeah, just aiming for the top there. Pretty good value. All the guys in the teams used to really take the mickey out of me for talking to my gear. So there's a picture of me talking to my gear. Because, you know, good, well looked after gear looks after you, doesn't it? You got to be careful with that. And that's a younger me, man. Yeah. Another classic route in Wales called Cwms y Dervish. All this was when I was on my time off, I've got to say, because I'm not wearing a helmet here. This route went from being about E5 down to about E3 as the cracks opened up. It's in a slate quarries in North Wales, and some amazing climbing there.
And we're getting more into the modern age, because aren't those Boreal Ferrays on your feet?
Oh yeah, they certainly. That was probably one of the first routes I ever did in the damn thing. But prior to this point, we were climbing EBs. I think I did left wall in
So
Quite a few
for
other-
people who are watching who don't know the significance, Boreal Foray it was the first super
yeah.
sticky shoe, and it came out in 1984.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's dating me a bit, isn't it? So that was probably about 85, I think, something like that, 84, 85. Yeah, plenty of trips over to Europe. This was one of my first trips over to Europe. Was a place called Boo Limestone. This is actually a limestone trad route, believe it or not. And there's a whole bunch of bits of around. I actually run into a guy called John Fantini on this trip in 1982. This was, and the next time I met him was in Skaha. He was actually a prolific new router in Skaha, and I was walking along the bottom of one of the crags there, and I got chatting with John. I goes, I'm sure I've met you somewhere before. And we started going through about where we'd met, and we met back in Verdon Gorge, actually, back in 1982. Just a super coincidence. And he was actually a prolific climber in Scar, doing lots of new routes. Mentioned the guy book plenty of times.
Yeah, I'll mention I was hitchhiking into the Verdon Gorge in 1980 and got picked up by Kevin McLean, the famous guidebook author from Squamish.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, Kev, I've met him a few times. Yeah, he's from the northeast of England and did a whole bunch of climbing there before I actually moved out to Canada. Same as me. So this is on the Italian side of the Alps. Pretty staple sort of fodder for British alpinists. The European Alps anyway, around Chamonix and Aosta in Verdon. This is the Aiguille Norte Putri. We did the bottom right hand side is a little thing called Peak Gamba. It's something we did. Pointing Nominata upon the left hand side of the picture, and some things in the middle. And a guy called Terry, that was on Pointing Nominata. We got somewhere close to the top of this, and I was feeling really unhappy with the snow conditions. And Terry goes, oh, fair enough, if you're not happy, let's go down. And then we got to the bottom, back to the hut, and we watched this huge avalanche come rumbling out of exactly where we'd been. So having a little bit of mountain sense. When was this? This was 1980, my first trip to the Alps. So being on the teams in Scotland actually instilled a little bit of self-preservation in me. And I got the old spider senses you get. And that was one of the times where the old spider senses had sort of, I didn't know why, because I was still very inexperienced. But I knew something was wrong. We got the hell out of there, and good job we did too. I've only ever been avalanched twice. One was in Scotland, just tromping up this snow slope, and the whole slope went. Only about 8 inches, but it was enough to knock me over backwards and take me down. And the second time was coming out of the Scott Duncan hut in really bad weather conditions on the Wapta. Couldn't see a damn thing where we were going. And I just, that little bench you come across as you come out of Scott Duncan after that little rock rib.
Yep.
I'm about 3 meters too far left, and I triggered a little slab avalanche. I got taken down the slope. Ooh, not good. All the clients thought I'd been a real goner. But anyway, I dusted myself off, clambered back up, got them, went out across the slope. We now back out and headed back down to the West Louise Lodge there, Bounty Lodge there, and sort of running with adrenaline. Quite an experience that was. That's the only 2 times I've been avalanched. Once in Scotland, once in Canada. They were quite an eye-opener. But the visibility was horrendous. Oh yeah, you managed to get up this one at all? Up on the top of the Grand Chamons. That's Jiggins.
Yeah, no, I haven't been to the top of the Grand Charmoz.
Yeah, Eperon was it? Eperon Cordier was the route we got up there, about 650 meters.
Yeah, no, I did. You're right. No, I did. Yeah, the Cordier Pillar. It is. Yeah, I have been there.
Yeah, so amazing rock, sham granite. Going across the top of this was brilliant, because looking over the other side, you got to see all sorts of bits and pieces. Like this, for instance, there's the Jurass, Walker Spur on the left. How do you pronounce that? The Giant on the right hand side. And this is a scene of Giant, yeah. I had interesting, we were at the Torino on my guides exam and had breakfast and went out towards the Giant. We're going to do the a bit of the old traverse across the Jurassic there. And just below the Giant there, I started throwing my guts up. It had poisoned me, food poisoning. And I just spent the whole of that day lying underneath the Giant, watching the assessor and the assessee climb the Giant. Really bad day that was for me. I didn't get the day. I had to go back the year after and do 2 days in the Swiss Alps to get my ticket. But yeah, I got 4 good days out of it. All the technical aspects were really good. Yeah, and later on, some of the routes further left, like the Walker and another route, which I won't mention, got done while I was trying to get me a resume up. A lot of stuff I'm pretty candid about because yeah, I'm not much of a blasting out what I've done. There's Mont Blanc. My God, Mont Blanc. The British Aspirant Guide's bane. I did this about 7 times in my first aspirant season, by 3 different routes over the Bossons, up the Goutier, which is the right-hand ridge, or over the 3 peaks, which up the left-hand side. And I could only count 3 of the days because you have to do different route to get the logbook timing. And yeah, if you're going to ever go Mont Blanc, go up the left-hand skyline to the top and come down the right-hand skyline. So you go up over the Mont Blanc du Tac or Mont Maudit to the summit of Mont Blanc, and then down the right-hand skyline, past the Goutier, past the Tête Rousse, jump on a train, head back down to the valley. So yeah, you start this is from the gantry across in the midi there. So yeah, Mont Blanc. I did it a couple of times again, second year aspirancy. But yeah, all good days, good clients, no epics on that. Super good.
Who were you working for at that time, Nick?
I went to work for a bunch of different people. International School of Mountaineering out of Lausanne in Switzerland. Pat Littlejohn's bunch, quite a historic company. A guy called Nick Parks who ran mountain tracks. I worked with Sandy Allen a few times. There was a Dutch, Edward Becker, went out with him a couple of times. Yeah, quite a few different guides. Some good experience. And the thing about the British Guide scheme was, weren't allowed to operate as an aspirant by yourself in the Alps. You were always mentored, and you had to go out with a full mountain guide of at least 3 years standing. So every day out on my apprenticeship or aspirancy in the Alps in Europe was alongside an experienced guide. You used to learn a hell of a lot from those guys doing that job. Yeah, super good system they had. I did 90 days work in the Alps to get the 30 quality days that got you through that period of your aspirancy. So the good thing about it was all paid work as well, so pretty good value. Yeah, this is one of the, this is the Matterhorn, if you don't recognize what it is. It's not a Cinnabon, which is the Matterhorn of North America. I also did another Matterhorn on another continent, the Matterhorn of the Gangotri or Shivling, which ended up being a pretty good trip myself. Yeah, this is Martin, one of my co-conspirators, and that's up on the north base of the Matterhorn. You see the clouds in the back. When we set out from the hut, the Hornley hut, we had a really good forecast. And the forecast lies through its teeth because we got halfway up the initial snow slopes on the north face of the mat there, and it just started crapping out big time. So we dug these little pigeonholes and sat out the storm, then ran away with our tails in between our legs. So yeah, the Matterhorn was actually one of the last things I ever guided in Europe. Just done me and Nick Parks, who runs mountain tracks in Europe there. I'd done a 6-day traverse from Chamonix to Zermatt. The Haute route, we're on foot in the summer, and we were out with a bunch of musicians from the London Philharmonic Orchestra. They were all Americans, actually, working musicians, and they're all racing snakes, really, really fit people. And as you were the last day going down towards Zermatt, they were looking up at this thing, and they were asking, "Can we go do that? Can we go do that? We've got a couple of extra days." The big issue with doing the Matterhorn is the fact that it's a one-on-one. So we got back down to Zermatt, and Nick rustled up 4 other guides, and we went back up a couple of days later to the Hornley hut. And Nick's a pretty savvy guy. We got up the next day at 1 o'clock in the morning. We got the tables right next to the door, and you might have heard rumours that the Guardian only opens up the door to the hut for the local guides, and then it goes down in rank to the foreign guides, and then to the recreationalists. Anyway, Nick got us right to the door, and as soon as that door went open, Nick dragged us out the door, and off we went. We were up the top from the hut to the summit. These, like I was saying, these guys were racing snakes. The hut to summit was in about 3 hours, 10 minutes or something like that. And we were back down to the hut in an overall time of about 7 hours. And that's the fastest I've ever done it. And these guys were just moving like lightning speed. The good thing that sort of makes things a bit easier is the Hornley Ridge is mainly rigged. Have you done it yourself?
No, I've never been to Zermatt, and I've never climbed the Matterhorn, but I would like to point out that the Canadian Rockies are an older range than the Alps. So really, the Matterhorn is the Assiniboine of the Alps.
Yeah, well, experience from doing the Matterhorn and the Assiniboine, I think the Assiniboine's more of a challenge. There you go. No big fix mentions the odd big way, but that's about it. But yeah, I certainly think the Assiniboine's a trickier venue.
Yeah, I had similar feedback from a client who had done both. He found Assiniboine a lot more challenging climb. Anyways.
Yeah, so everybody has to go to Yosemite, don't they? So I got a couple of trips to Yosemite. When was my first trip there? 81 and then 84, I think, something like that. But the good book, really good value. And what's that called?
Serenity Crack.
Hey, Barry, yeah, you got it. The odd bolt, lots of nut placements. And I remember doing a top picture of this and hanging in a finger pocket and placing some gear and pulling the crux and not being able to feel my finger for about a week afterwards because it had gone numb from hanging off this middle pocket. I used to be quite good at climbing peg scars.
We should have talked to each other more 40 years ago, Nick, because in 1980, I was in Chamonix for the season, and in 81 in the fall, I was in Yosemite for the season.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Oh, paths have probably crossed at some point.
Yep.
Yeah, so Yosemite, what was it, El Caps 3003? And this thing is called the Troll Wall in Norway. This thing is like the same height. And we did a route called the Rimmen route. It's called the Vertical Mile. And the Rimmen route was done by a guy who founded Troll Equipment, which is the troll tinned, troll equipment. And that was the company formed in Wales, and there was trolls in Wales, So we did did a Rimmen route, and there was me and a little guy called Mark Hartree. His nickname was because he was about 5'2". Might not be doing him justice there. But 2BA was a little engineering nut. And me and 2BA, Mark Hartree had bummed our way into somebody else's trip to climb this. We got picked up at Oslo, and we got on the road, and we got on this thing. I have not got any route pictures of climbing it because me and Mark didn't really have time to do anything because we got to the bivvy site a couple of 100 feet up from about halfway up the slope here. And we made a decision to actually jettison our bivvy gear and go for it in the day. and we managed it, but 16 hours climbing, probably one of the first ascents of the route, and definitely pretty good going for time wise. We got to the top. The last sort of 200 meters of it was raining torrentially. We climbed this gully, and the water was just washing rocks down. We met the support party at the top, and they escorted us down because we were completely blown. Yeah, so that was one of pretty good highlight in my climbing career. That, and then we went back a couple of years later. Don't know why, because we're completely crazy about. We had to go in winter, but same sort of route. We were trying for a first winter ascent of it, and we got on the route. And this guy in the foreground, he's not very well defined. Name's Jerry Gore. Jerry did a route called Young Men on Fire, a big wall route in the Bugaboos. Young Men on Fire, because he was on that, he got hit by lightning. But anyway, Jerry's just left the Marines here, and we're all embarked on this route together. So this is actually a couple of days after we'd been on it, and there was this incredible storm. That snow behind us wasn't there when we got to that ledge a couple of days to start before, and that snow had been coming down and building up, and we'd been lying in this bivvy site freezing our asses off. Our bivvies, just eating and drinking and staying as dry as we possibly could, and listening to big avalanches rumbling down all around us and stuff. So that turned out to be a bit of a non-starter as well. See the background there, the amount of snow that was in there, and you see the chutes where the avalanches have been coming down. We just ran away with our tail between our feet. Absolute nightmare that was. We're lucky to get out of that one alive. Another trip we went on was into the Gangotri region of the Indian Himalaya. If you ever get a chance, or you wanted to go to the Himalayas as a sort of first adventure, see if you can get to this place, because it's just an immense area. Only 2 days walking. You get peaks like this, Bhagirathi 1, Bhagirathi 2, Bhagirathi 3. James Blanchard, another compatriot of ours, did a first ascent on one of the Bag 2 or Bag 3, and that's quite a no mean affair. Guess what that one is? You know what it is? Oh, go back to that one. Yeah, we're in the area to do we actually got permission to do a mountain called Tali Saga, which is right next to Meru, but we never actually we had a look at this thing. It was just horrendously hard. I should have got some photographs of our actual objective, which was a mountain called Shivling. We managed to pull off a second ascent it was the official second ascent, but we reckon it was the third ascent. The Japanese did the first ascent in the Northeast Ridge. Loads of fixed ropes and stuff like that. We did a 7-day up and down alpine style on it to the top of Shivling. And then we reckon a couple of Spanish guys had done an illegal ascent of it. So we got the official second, but obviously it was probably the third ascent of the thing. I wish I got some more pictures of that, but the slides didn't work out. And then anybody uses salt if you want to go into really big peaks. When you go on here, 89, I think it was. This is Denali from the flying. And this probably, we just went to do the normal West Ridge with a possibility of doing the Cassin, me and Terry. There was a group of 6 wanting to have a go at it. And we had prior to us arriving, 3 guys had died on the West Ridge, and we got there and the weather was unsettled. And while we were down at the site, the flying site, another 2 Americans had been blown off the camp at 17 and were seriously injured. And we were all sort of twitching, thinking, oh God, is this going to go? But we actually managed to 14-day round trip from the bottom to the top. And that was what I looked like afterwards. Pretty gnarled out and unhappy and hungry, especially eating military rations for that trip. But the summit day on that was probably one of the hardest days I've ever had in my life. It was like blowing wind, -30, and wind and cold, just nasty. We had these white suits on, which scared quite a few people because we just came out of the murk, and there we were. They were windsuits, so, they worked out pretty well. That's descending the west buttress after coming down from 17. Another trip I went on was like the 50th anniversary of the RAF Mountain Rescue Service. That's a big bunch of guides, isn't it? Big bunch of guys, not guides. Bill Batson, one of the team leaders at the time, put it all together. And there's actually 3 different trips amongst all these guys. A trekking party, an easy objective, an easier objective, and a harder objective. Donkeys, oh my God! You've been to Rakaposhi, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
And you've been to Duran as well. And on the way in, one of the noisiest nights I've ever had, because these guys use donkeys to haul the gear around. And we got to our base camp, and there's about 60 odd donkeys, and everybody went to bed, and one donkey starts giving it, then all the other donkeys start giving it, and then they all quieten down, and there's like 5 minutes of peace, and then another donkey starts, and then they all start, and that went on all night. Nightmare. Anyway, this is Duran. Okay, this is Duran, and you've been up this one, haven't you? I think didn't you guide it?
Yeah, we went there as a Yamnuska trip in 1994. Yeah, and got quite high on the peak of the last camp, but had quite a abrupt and violent storm, and was very, very happy after this most stressful guiding day of my life to get my 2 clients back down.
Yeah, I bet. The 2 technical objectives were the North Ridge, which is the big long ridge, and our high point got to be the little col on the left-hand side, because we got there and I look at the ridge and it was like double corniced and massive cornices all the way up the damn thing, and it didn't bode for very sort of a long life if we actually continued on it. Anyway, we had the other team were doing the classic route up this big face here to the shoulder and up to the top, and we got 4 guys to the summit. Anyway, on their way down, they passed 2 Spanish guys on the way up, and our guys got to the bottom, and we then a couple of days later, a huge storm came in, and these guys never turned back up at base camp. So there's another shot of the approach. These guys, there's better look at the face there. See that big avalanche? We were rolling our tents at night, and this thing came down. We thought we were goners. We upped the tents and moved them somewhere else after that. But I think there's the North Ridge. That's just a very foreshortened section of it. Over the top there's some huge cornices and double cornices and that sort of put us off the idea. Yeah, so we managed to get comms out with a liaison officer, and they got the choppers in there, and they went looking for these 2 guys, and they never turned up. I think the year after you were up there and found them, didn't you?
Yeah, they never did come down from the mountain, and the next year on our ascent, Troy Kerwin and I found their tent and opened the tent, and they were just in, positions of sleep and rest, actually, and, long dead for quite a while, but very well preserved because of the cold and the altitude. But we did get their passports and wallets out and took those and handed them over to the embassy, the Spanish embassy in Islamabad. And about 3 months later, I got a letter from one of the fathers asking some more details and stuff. So I wrote him back saying, his son was just looked like he'd fallen asleep actually. And yeah, I think that helped that guy out, and he was appreciative of that information. Yeah.
We got 4 guys to the top, but it was a pretty sad ending to a trip like that. So we never go out to experience those sort of things. Yeah, there's a good one to finish on, eh? Me climbing again. Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had a great life. I've got an incredibly good experience in the rescue teams. It gave me the experience and skills to actually go through, attain my IFMG guides qualification. Had a great time running the team.
But the question in the hanging here is, when did you come to Canada, and how did you end up in Canada?
Well, I previously met a lassie in Dublin who's a Canadian, and we sort of hit it off, and I married her, and that's what sort of gave me the incentive to become a mountain guide and move to Canada and work here. That didn't work out, unfortunately, but anyway, I'm happy now. Got 2 really energetic kids, 2 boys, 18 and 15. And I'm happy with my partner at the moment, and I'm incredibly happy to be working here with Yamnuska. And it's quite surprising that over the years, our paths have probably crossed at some point or the other, and here I am being interviewed by you. Quite surprising. Eh?
Yeah, it sounds like the Canmore part of the deal worked out. So.
Oh, I certainly did. Yeah, I'm super happy. Yeah.
Yeah. I say the same myself. It's been a pleasure working with you over the years, Nick, and so great to have you as part of the team here at Yamnuska Mountain Adventures. And yeah, I guess if we have any questions for Nick, now would be the time. And if not, we might as well say goodbye to all of the Yamnuskavites who are watching. And thanks so much for tuning in this week, and keep track on our Facebook page for next week's title for the Guides Talk.
Wahoo. Half a career. Excellent.
Alrighty. Thanks, Nick.
That's exhausting.